Okay. Let's see. So, last stream I was playing New Vegas Dead Money. And let me tell you, I was so pissed off at the end of it because the game decided to soft lock because dog died. And it happened after my autosave. I guess that's why they added a bunch of typewriters for you to use, kind of like in Resident Evil. Shit. I think I might have lost one of my autosaves because I was playing again. I was playing off stream. Alright. Just exit out of Blender. I was playing Blender and I actually got the 44 Magnum from Fallout 4 into the game. The cylinder doesn't swing out though. I couldn't get the cylinder to work right. We'll say one of my goals is to get Fallout 4 weapons and consumables. And the other goal, not sure what the secondary goal will be actually. Well, there is a way out of the back rooms. If you play the mod long enough, you will eventually find the exit. Okay, I'm not sure what I did, but I think the viewer count finally fixed itself. It's actually updating properly. Rabbits. Now I want you to tell me what this is supposed to be. Weird. It's Postal 2, see? Champ. Trailer. This tool shed with the shovel. YouTube, if you copyright claim this video, I want you to know that it's fair use because I'm not making any cash off of it. See, this is what the dude's trailer looks like on the inside, apparently. All these dirty dishes. Oh, cool. I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought it was like the cabinet was a... I thought the cabinet was like a prop. Well, I'm just gonna leave all this stuff here because it's decor. Rural cake. Oh. I made that. What do I need to make them? Oh, I don't have any ramen. Because I added a few extra stuff. Extra food items from... you know what? I'll go with this for now. We're heading to Swanky Hill. Mutant Camp of the Exiles. What do you say we check that out? And Ridgeview. I have not played Welcome to Ridgeview at all. Like, not once have I played that mod, but I've had it installed all this time. So I kind of want to go there. It sounds like one of those really edgy mods. Like, apparently it's a... I don't remember what the description said exclusively or like exactly, but said something like, group of teenagers surviving out in the wilderness. As soon as I hear that, I think, oh great, it's one of those types of mods. Like really edgy stuff. Now, I have no idea if the mod is actually that edgy, but it's a bet that I'm willing to place. I don't know, man, I could ask the same thing. Okay, I've already killed the cook, I guess. I'm hit! Yeah, I've already killed the cook. So I'll take that. Stone. Oh, silver. Hungry. Whoa.
Alright, it's on now.
Dies. Alright, it's on now.
No!
Hammer of Hades. Do I really need the Hammer of Hades? Ooh. 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 Creature's got the buzzsaw. Poseidon stash of 100,000 volts. Poseidon stashes are secrets. There's a number of them for you to go find, so it's kind of like a treasure hunt. I don't want to go to the Sunset Sarsaparilla HQ because I have a mod that adds an iBot, and for some reason it causes the game to soft lock. Fire extinguisher launcher. I really need to change those sounds. Because I did it with Fallout 3 because Fallout 3 doesn't let you dedicate sounds for each weapon. Like, reload-wise. Lever-action shotgun worked. Cool. Let's try this buzzsaw on for size. First, let's save because the game can crash at any time. God, my body is visible. I keep getting a glitch where my character's clothes, along with his body, except for his head and hands, turn completely invisible. The hell is this guy? Okay.
On hostile target.
This little ankle biter. Alright, who has a silenced gun? Alright. Alright, this is fun. Oh. Oh, jeez. goodness. Alright, let's try that again. I need the shotgun surgeon perk. That would really help right about now. Whoa! Oh, goodness. The amount of props inside the store. Because there's a shit ton of objects inside the store. Embryo ancient physics. It's frozen. The game's frozen. I have to shut it down. No. Oh my god. Alright. Shut it down. Shut it down. Please. Okay, good. How you guys doing today? You guys doing well? That's good. That's good. Really don't feel like doing all of this over again, but you know what? I'm gonna open up Gek for a little bit. I hope you guys don't mind if I put on a little bit of music. How about I put this into a different YouTube mirror just so that I don't have to turn on the sound for Microsoft Edge. Does FreeTube still work, or has YouTube fucked it over again? Because YouTube will do literally anything to try and win the war on other YouTube mirrors. And it's like, you mind? Whoops. No! Oh my word. I meant... I opened up the wrong thing in OBS. Again. Alright. I don't have the patience for this, you know that? Damn it. I could really go for like a... could really go for like a big plate of chicken tenders or something. I'm hungry. So there are some tracks. There are some tracks on this playlist that are probably gonna get copyright claimed. So yeah. But I made this playlist a few years ago back in shit, when did I make this playlist anyway? Uh I wish I would tell you like, oh, unavailable like, oh, unavailable videos are hidden. Okay, for one, like, how many unavailable videos? Well, I guess it tells that. But two, what are the unavailable videos? Like, it would be really helpful if it told me, you know? This platform is dying. Remember the hashtag save TF2 movement? Can we get a hashtag save YouTube movement? Ugh. All right. Window capture. All right. I wish window capture could be done a little bit better. But, I'm gonna do this for now. While we're here, I'm just gonna be playing around on Gek. All right. I'm not gonna pretend like I own any of the music here, so YouTube, don't you dare pretend like I am. One day I should probably try updating my banner, for better or for worse. So my banner, my banner is a piece of shit. Guess now would be a good time to put up the poll, or quiz, rather. Alright. If someone gets the quiz wrong today, I'm gonna be sad. Now, maybe I'll read some creepypastas. You know what? Let's read some of the good ones. Alright. I was Jack, Jeff the Killer, Sonic EXE. Real classics. We could read some creepypastas, but Zolgo. Alright. So I guess I'll read this one. Zolgo. Alright. Zolgo. This is about a 13-minute read. I'm gonna go fetch some coffee and something to eat. I'll be right back soon. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. I was really hungry. But, yeah. So, right now, I'm going to be reading a few creepypastas, starting with He Comes, aka Zalgo. Now, Zalgo, according to lore, his presence signals the upcoming end of the world. At least to my recollection. Now, I know this mic probably isn't the best for creepypasta reading, but hey, you only live once. Might as well try it while I can. Forgive the length of this message. This is the first and possibly the last time I'll have access to a computer. So I thought I'd better write this all down while I can and get it to those who should know. I'm leaving town. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just getting as far away as I can. Okay, so, as some of you may know, I took out a loan and opened my own auto shop a little over a year ago. Business has been going decently well. I can't complain, and I've always been grateful to all of my customers who would come to me exclusively when God knows there are so many already established in town. I've been doing well enough that I was able to hire on my buddy, Neil, a few months ago. He's been working hard, helping out really well, as I always knew he would. Well, I needed to take a day and go to a LeMay's class with Rebecca last month. And so I entrusted the shop to Neil for the morning and most of the afternoon. That's the day I think everything actually started, because when I got back, he seemed to be in a stupor and was covered in oil. It even had some smeared across his face, as if he'd tried to drink it or something. I told him to go home and clean himself up because we had no clients at the moment and I could take care of anyone who came in for the time being. He came back 45 minutes later, and he was still much quieter than usual. He worked as well as he ever did, but something just seemed off about him. I asked him if anything happened while I was out. He just shook his head. I asked him how many clients we had, and he just muttered something unintelligible. I asked him to repeat himself, and he turned and glared at me, and for the briefest moment, I could have sworn his eyes appeared to be completely black. No iris, no sclera, just utter, all-consuming blackness. I stumbled back, bumped a shelf, knocking things down. When I looked back at him, he was still looking at me, but he didn't seem to be glaring hatefully the way we had before. He just seemed kind of out of it. Just a couple, he answered. Some woman, and then a tattooed biker-type looking dude. I assumed one of them must have asked for an oil change, and that's when he spilled it, so I asked if he had any trouble, and he simply shrugged. I had looked around the garage while he was gone, and I saw no traces of an oil spill, so whatever had happened, he must have gotten it all on himself, and none of it anywhere else, miraculously. He seemed reluctant to talk about it, so I didn't press the issue, and we worked on throughout the day. That day and the next were relatively normal, other than him still being awkward and quiet. I asked him if he'd like to go out and get us lunch while I tended to the shop, and he said, sure. When he came back, I was busy doing a diagnostic for a client, so he put the food on the counter in the office to wait for me. And he went ahead and ate. I finished up with that customer. Would have to keep the car overnight to figure out just why it kept dying on her. So I asked Neil to give her a ride home, and then I went to grab my food. He brought me some Chinese food and an iced tea. So I opened the soy sauce packets to pour some over my food when I noticed the strangest thing. It was as if the soy sauce was a living thing somehow, spreading out like dozens of squirming, inky black maggots when it fell into the fried rice. burying itself inside. I took the fork to scoop out the rice to look deeper inside, and small smoky tendrils would rise from the rice occasionally and dissipate. I was incredibly hungry at that point, but I was way too creeped out to eat, so I chucked it and the iced tea in the garbage and decided I'd just wait until I got home that evening to eat something I prepared with my own hands. I'd never in my life seen anything remotely like that, and I couldn't even fathom how I would ask Neil if he noticed anything similar. As cold and distant as it'd been lately, I was sure he'd look at me like I was Looney Tunes, so I just shut up about it. That Friday, we went down to the old watering hole, as we always do, to get some drinks and watch the local bands play, and Neil was just as quiet and distant as had been all week. He's not a bad-looking fellow, though, and so despite him not really going out of his way to speak to anyone, a woman went over to where he was sitting and started talking to him, and ended up leaving together that night. Monday morning, I tried breaking the ice by asking how his weekend went. He gave me a nod and muttered, "All right." I'd asked him if he got lucky with that young lady when I saw him with, and he gave me the smallest grin, which was probably the first grin I'd seen on his face in a week, and said, "It went well." I didn't pressure him for details. I knew he'd share if he chose to. The small grin was enough to assuage my worries and lend me some hope that he might be back to his old self soon. The day was relatively busy until about 3 p.m., so I finally had a spare moment to sit in the office and listen to the radio while I waited on the next client. So there I was, leaning back in my chair with my feet propped up on my desk when I swiveled around and looked at my bulletin board that sits behind my head with all manner of clippings stuck to it. I had a few Sunday comic strips such as Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes that I'd read maybe 100 times since I'd opened up shop there. But that day, something was different. The first panel seemed normal, but in each subsequent panel, inky black tendrils crept out from the edges of the frame and from behind the characters. Blood dripped from the ears and eyes, and sometimes even their noses. In each of the strips, one of the characters would say, "He comes." I sat staring in astonishment for a moment before I realized the tendrils were moving ever so slightly, and each of the characters' heads turned ever so slightly towards me, and I threw myself back away from the bulletin board, sliding over my desk and onto the floor. I ran out into the garage and yelled for Neil. I could not be the only one to see this. To my surprise, he had gone, and I hysterically walked back to the office and peered inside. The comics were still corrupted, but they no longer appeared to be moving. I crept over to it and reached out to pluck one of the comics free when I noticed the inky black tendrils starting to seep across the page towards where my fingers were, at least 3 times as fast as I'd moved before. I jerked my hand away. Nothing good could possibly come from letting that blot of ink touch my skin. Of course, I ripped the entire bulletin board down, burned it in a tin trash can out back, and never spoke of it again. That night, I went home and my wife was already in bed fast asleep. My mind was racing and I couldn't even bring myself to eat dinner that night. With no one to vent my worries to, I fell into a restless sleep and kept awakening to nightmare after nightmare, seemingly every hour of the night, until I just gave up on sleep entirely. That Friday, I went to the bar again, even though my wife couldn't drink, being pregnant and all. Neil wasn't really any fun to hang with anymore, and none of my other friends could seem to be reached. I just needed to get a good buzz and I'd start feeling better, I reckoned. After downing a couple of beers, I excused myself to the bathroom when I noticed I was more inebriated than I'd estimated. So I leaned over the sink to splash some water onto my face, and that's when I heard it. Like a sheet of fabric being dragged across the floor, a voice rasped ever so quietly out of the drain. It sounded like a prolonged exhale for the longest time until I finally recognized words hidden amongst all those vowels. "He comes." Cracks appeared in the porcelain, snaking out from the ring around the drain. At least they looked like cracks at first. But after a few seconds, I recognized them as the same tendrils of the corruption I'd seen in the comics earlier that week, snaking their way slowly along. I stumbled backwards out of the bathroom door and right into someone's chest. I turned around, stared up into the pitch-black eyes of a 6.5-foot biker with tattoos covering every piece of exposed skin, besides his hands and head. I stumbled quickly away from him, and his evil, piercing gaze followed me as I retreated through the bar. It felt like a dream, where whenever you're running for your life, it feels like running through quicksand. As I walked across the room, I noticed the biker wasn't the only one staring at me. It seemed every pair of eyes in the place were focused on me, and more than half of those eyes appeared to be perfectly black, with no hint of iris or sclera. A few lips moved, and though I couldn't hear their voices over the sound of the jukebox, I could easily guess what they were saying. He comes. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. I hadn't been getting much sleep for the past couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, which I'm guessing those of you who've spoken to me recently could have guessed. I keep seeing those pitch-black eyes staring at me. I'm afraid everyone I see will turn and whisper those words to me, staring deep into my soul with that evil glare. Every time I go near a sink or go to grab a bite to eat, I'm afraid I'll see those inky, snaking tendrils squiggling towards me. Even my wife has seemed cold and distant lately. Then, tonight, as I'm driving home from work, struggling to keep my eyes open so I don't drift into oncoming traffic, my cell phone rang, and it was Rebecca. She was on her way to the hospital to have our baby, but for the first time in 2 weeks, I was actually happy. Advertisements. She was in the labor room strapped to a monitor when I got there, watching for her contractions. She barely noticed when I walked in, but didn't seem startled when I sat down beside her and took her hand into mine. I tried talking to her, but she was unresponsive, and I was so tired I didn't even realize I'd started to drift to sleep when the nurses came in and started moving her to the delivery room about a half an hour later. I put on my scrubs and a hair net and went in with her to hold her hand and coach her through like they trained us in Lamaze when she started cursing and screaming. I was prepared for that, as well as her ever-tightening grip on my hand. But when I saw the movement in her tummy, my mind started reeling. The doctor said the baby was crowning and told her to push. I echoed his orders, and she screamed at me with a voice I couldn't begin to describe. When I looked down, she was staring straight up at me with those same eyes I'd seen on the biker, the same eyes I thought I'd seen on Neil weeks before. I tried to jerk my hand away, but she maintained her grip. Black tar-like blood splashed the front of the doctor's scrubs, but he seemed to pay no heed. When I looked at her tummy again, black veins seemed to stand out beneath her skin, pulsating. She continued to stare at me, and she was no longer screaming, just grinning, those obsidian eyes boring into me. To invoke the Nesperian hive mind of chaos, she breathed in a raspy voice. He who waits behind the wall, the doctor continued as he stared down at the child, my child, lying silently cradled in his blood-stained hands. He looked up, raised the baby, and it appeared to be covered in oozy, inky black liquid, much like that had covered Neil a couple weeks prior. It did not cry out, but it was alive, and it moved when he held it up. When his eyes opened, they were as black as my wife's, as black as the doctor's. In unison, they all breathed his name. Salgo. I ripped my hand free of my wife's iron grip and stumbled out of the room, barreling into the nurses passing the corridor just outside. When I stood up and looked back into the room, I could see the inky black tendrils seeming to extend from the doctor and my newborn across the floor to where I stood. I turned and ran back down the hall to the elevator and slammed my finger into the buttons. When I looked back, the tendrils had come into the hallway, yet no one else seemed to notice it until it slithered over their feet and up their legs, at which point they abruptly stopped, turned, and looked at me with those same obsidian eyes. I abandoned my effort to call the elevator and broke into a panicked run for the stairs. I ran down the 15 flights of stairs all the way to the lobby, tore ass out into the parking lot, hopped in my car, and started driving. I didn't know what the fuck I was going. I just had to get the fuck away from there. I don't know if I'm going crazy. It certainly seems like it, but I just can't be around anyone I know anymore. They all have those same eyes and those same dead stares, and even my child. Oh God, my baby. I still see those eyes staring at me from cars beside me. And by some strange coincidence, the same biker from the previous Friday night at the bar pulled up beside me an hour away from the hospital and followed me for nearly 2 miles. He'd turn and stare at me, grinning. I couldn't see his eyes through the sunglasses at the time, but I knew it was the same guy. His tattoos seemed to move of their own free will. The flaming skull on his right bicep began bleeding from its eye sockets. As soon as I could, I slammed on my brakes, allowing him to fly past me as I swerved to my left and did a U-turn. I think I lost him, but that was an hour ago. I'm at a motel 3 hours out of town, the first place I found that has Wi-Fi. I'm tired, I'm shaking, and my hand itches where my wife's nails scratched me open. I honestly don't know what to do, or who I can turn to. This story will sound insane, and I'll probably be institutionalized, and I'm not sure that wouldn't be the best thing for me. I just can't bear to look into those eyes anymore. Every time I see someone new, they stare at me, I start to panic. Because I just know it's out there looking for me, whatever it is. Even when I lay down and start to drift off to sleep, I hear those words. He comes. That is the Zalgo creepypasta. This is my first time reading something on stream, actually. I have to admit, this is a really good creepypasta. So, let's browse for some other creepypastas I haven't. Yeah, some creepypastas that I've heard of but never read. It's- yeah, I've never actually gone and read Zalgo before. It's actually a really good creepypasta, but I'm sad that it ends here. Like, I'm telling you, the author could have just kept writing and I'd still continue to read it, because it is, like, the simplistic nature, like, creepy tendrils and, corruption of various media, like, how his comic strips became corrupt. That's actually pretty terrifying. Like, this could even be like an ARG or something. Like, this could be like an ARG. It's Gateway to the Mind. I believe I remember this. Yeah. Hero Brine. Uh, no. Polybius. That's a good one. Rap. Psychosis, Robert the Doll, Rugrats Theory, Sally, Slender Man, Smile Dog, Squidward Suicide. That's a pretty iconic one. In fact, they even referenced it in SpongeBob and Random Land, but then they replaced it with baby Squidward head on an actual baby for some reason, which that's even creepy. Theater. True story of the theater. I've read both of those at least once. Alright, there's a creepypasta I've been wanting to read, but I can't find it. I can't remember it, though. The Harbinger. Alright, is it here? The Harbinger Experiment. Oops. Mr. Wide now. The Harbinger. Why is the Harbinger creepypasta like? Why is it redirecting me to Mr. Widemouth? I want to read the Harbinger. Alright, here it is. Alright, so this image is from a reading of the Harbinger Experiment, Fear Chronicles. Should probably update the title of the stream, huh? Okay. Just wanted to update the title of the stream so people know what we're doing. Let's get rid of this Algo image. This should be the actual creepypasta. Alright. We begin the story now. The world we live in is full of things we don't understand. Being the curious humans that we are, we naturally try and seek these things out. Doing so has led us to remarkable discoveries and inventions that we never could have imagined 100 years ago. We've defeated disease, built to the sky itself, and even created machines that could take us beyond the clouds and into the stars. If our ancestors could see us and what we've created, I'm sure many of them would see us as gods. Our innate curiosity and lust for knowledge has not always led us to greatness, however. True evil and darkness have also been uncovered in humanity's conquest of knowledge. And in the end, I fear this evil will be our doom. I do not say this from the standpoint of a great philosopher who has sat and simply pondered things either. No, I say this because I've seen it, experienced it. I was a part of it. The event I'm about to relay to you is true in its entirety. This I swear. I feel certain this will fall on deaf ears, and many of you will not believe this. Or many of you will believe this to just be another spooky story meant to give you cheap thrills. But I promise you, this is neither my intent nor my purpose. The purpose of this story is to simply warn you of what lurks beyond the veil of what we can see and understand, to show you what awaits us in the darkness, even if I myself don't understand it. What I'm about to tell you has happened, and I feel certain it will happen again. In 1971, a not-so-well-known scientist began preparations for an extremely secretive project known as the Harbinger experiment. I would like to keep the identity of the scientist a secret for personal reasons, so throughout this recounting I will refer to him as Zimmerman. Zimmerman's background is unclear at best beyond 1971. All that is known about him before that time is that he grew up somewhere in Maryland with a strange fascination of the occult and supernatural. This later made him an outcast among his fellow scientists due to how scoffed upon the metaphysical was, and still is, at the time. Zimmerman's opinions concerning the otherworldly were not the sole cause for him being an outcast, though. It was his methods that made him widely unaccepted among his peers. Zimmerman was well known during his time for being ruthless and cold beyond measure. He never cared about the means. All that mattered to him was results, and if he predicted the results to be value enough, anything would be worth obtaining them. It was his insatiable and brutal lust for the truth that made him feared among those that knew of him. And the few that knew him and did not fear him believed in him and followed him, his work closely. The word Harbinger itself has such a mysterious and intimidating taste to it. Maybe it's the way it rolls off our tongues, or maybe it's simply due to its association with the project. But the word always seems to carry a certain amount of doom with it, which would make sense. The word itself means to warn or forebode. I can't imagine Zimmerman's reason for giving the experiment this title, but in retrospect, it fits perfectly. Zimmerman came to a select few, me being one of them, told us he was working on something big, and that he needed people who could keep confidentiality and not spread idle gossip of his work. While he did not fully trust some of us, he did know that we were professionals, and that for some reason or another, we were all in dire need of employment. I'd worked at the local clinic as a doctor, but I was caught stealing medication and was promptly fired. This left a very dark mark on my resume, so work was hard to find. I was also a native to Alaska and lived near where the experiment would take place, so I guess you could say I was a convenient choice. As you can imagine, I jumped at the opportunity. It was hard not to when I saw the payout. 15 of us were hired in total. Some were colleagues of his that had been working with him for a while, some were maintenance workers, and a few were hired as private security. I was the only medical professional to be hired. It's still a wonder to me how he even attained the funds necessary for the experiment. I would not be wholly surprised if his financing was not entirely legal. But legal or not, I needed the money and he was paying. Looking back, it's a decision I've come to regret. After Zimmerman obtained his money, he used it to buy a relatively large plot of land deep in the frozen wilderness of Alaska. And upon that piece of land, Zimmerman built a concrete structure, not too dissimilar to a bunker, in fact. The sole difference being that its goal was to keep any potential damage contained within the structure rather than keeping it out, as he put it. Most of the structure dug underneath the earth, which had the effort of making the underground complex seem so much smaller than it really was from the outside, as would be expected. There was only one way of entering and leaving the underground structure. It was via a ladder that led from a small, unassuming concrete building on the surface, which I will refer to from now on as the entrance building for convenience, to the network below. After everyone had gone to bed for the night, the hatch that contained the ladder would be sealed off with a very large and thick metal lid. Zimmerman was very strict about this. Located not too far away from the entrance building was a series of wooden cabins that would serve as sleeping quarters for the staff Zimmerman had hired. Compared to the entrance building standing on the surface, the underground system was massive. At the center of the complex was the control room. This is where all the facilities, electronics, and such were linked to. This included security cameras, lights, and door controls. Consoles, monitors, and computers lined the walls of this large central chamber. This is also where the ladder in the entrance building connected to in the underground complex. Connected to the control room were 3 doors. One that led to a smaller room that served as the infirmary, another door led to a break room, and the last door led into the hallways. The hallways are where the complex began to feel extremely eerie. They were, for some reason, laid out in an extremely confusing scheme that led in circles into complete dead ends. These hallways made up a vast majority of the complex, and it would be very easy to get lost in the maze if you were unfamiliar with the complex. But if you knew where you were going, you would find yourself standing before one of 3 8-by-8-foot rooms before long. Each room had a camera hooked up to one of the corners of the room, and all 3 of those cameras were connected to a corresponding monitor in the control room. Cameras were also scattered throughout the hallway so that whoever was watching their corresponding monitor could see anywhere they wanted to when they wanted. Thick metal doors stood at the entrance to each of the 3 8-by-8 rooms. In order to open them, you would have to enter a 4-digit code into a panel located near the door. I remember when I first arrived at the complex how badly the hallways frightened me. I've always been claustrophobic, you see, and those hallways were so very narrow. The noise, or more accurately the lack of noise, was also a tremendous source of fear for me in those bleak, narrow hallways. It was always so unnaturally silent, as if the entire world had stopped moving. It really made you feel like you were trapped down there. Thankfully, though, I only rarely ventured to those hallways, where I was the only medical professional in the facility and I had virtually no reason to go into them. In the beginning, I found it so peculiar that Zimmerman would ask for a medical professional like me on a project like this, but by the time it was all over, I understood why. The official purpose of the Harbinger experiment was to test and observe the effects of extended isolation on the human mind. This is what was listed on reports being sent out at least, but unbeknownst to all of us who were not participating in the project, excluding the subjects, true purpose was much darker. Like I said before, Zimmerman had always had an obsession with the occult and supernatural. He sought to prove himself to those who did not believe in him. He wanted physical proof that the supernatural was a real phenomenon. He wanted to be the first one to attain said proof. The true purpose of the Harbinger experiment was to find proof of the metaphysical, a world we could not see. The thought of doing this was naturally a tad bit daunting and scary, but it was Zimmerman's method of doing so that was truly terrifying. Zimmerman believed that he would be able to open a portal between worlds momentarily, allowing 3 random entities to cross over to our world. Each one of those beings would be trapped within one of the 3 rooms. Zimmerman had the theory that any entity would try and latch onto the nearest living thing that had the capacity for it. He wanted to use this technique to trap a spirit in physical form by allowing it to enter a living being that had been injected with compound mixture of Zimmerman's creation. In theory, this compound would keep the entity from simply leaving whatever it was attached to. The only way it would be able to leave the host who had been injected with the compound was through death. According to Zimmerman, the host would have to be something living with a will strong enough to survive the possession. And there's only one known species that possesses the amount of will required for this: humans. Zimmerman had also done something to ensure that the entities would only enter 3 rooms, and that there would be only one entity in each room, though I cannot say I know what exactly he did. In fact, I know next to nothing when it comes to how Zimmerman managed to do what he did. He liked to keep his mythology a secret to his most trusted colleagues, most likely due to his paranoia that someone would steal his ideas and take credit for the success of said ideas. If I had known that this was the true purpose before I signed up, I may have reconsidered. But Zimmerman decided not to tell us until we were all gathered in his fortress. Even if any of us wanted to leave, I doubt we would have been allowed to do so. The security team Zimmerman hired was loyal to him and the payout. It's not likely that Zimmerman had given them the order to now allow anyone to leave. There were 3 different subjects included in the experiment. All were native to Alaska, and each one was lured into the project under the belief that they would be participating in a harmless study of the effect of isolation on the human mind, as I mentioned before, which is why none of the subjects objected when they realized that they would be confined to one of the 3 rooms that I mentioned earlier. First subject was a young man who was apparently out of work and desperately needed the money that had been offered for participating in the study. The second was a woman. By looking at her, I could tell that she was an addict of some sort. And the third and final subject was an older man, a drifter if I had to guess. One thing they all had in common was none of them had any family or friends left. In short, no one would miss them, which is why they were chosen for the project. I am sorry. I wish I could supply more information about the subjects, but all this has been drawn from memory, and I was given little information on the 3 to begin with. The experiment did not officially begin until 1987, 16 years after its original announcement. I was eager to begin, so I packed up and headed out to the complex as soon as I could. I arrived at the compound about a week before the subjects had even signed up, and a whole month before the project even began. I was not the first to arrive by any means. When I got there, Zimmerman, his colleagues, and the security team had already arrived. I guess you could say I was among the people Zimmerman did not trust to arrive first. Everyone had arrived about a week before the experiment began. There was a noticeable rift between those who were there simply for the money, like me, and those who were followers of Zimmerman. On October 15th, 1987, all the preparations were in place. The subjects had been sealed in their rooms, cameras, lights, and speakers were fully operational, and all the staff members had settled in. The time had come for the experiment to officially begin. Zimmerman asked everyone to report to the control room around 9 p.m. to witness the beginning of the experiment. He wanted everyone to be present when he proved all his theories had been correct and that he was not just a madman. He wanted us to see the fruits of his labor. When everyone had finally gathered in the large control room, Zimmerman turned to us and simply said, "Observe." He then turned his back to us, leaned into the microphone that would project his voice through the 3 rooms, then he began chanting in a strange language that I feel certainly no one but Zimmerman could understand. We all observed the 3 large monitors on the wall, silently waiting for something to happen. The subjects all stood in their room, dumbstruck by Zimmerman's chanting, staring at the monitors with confused expressions on their faces. After about 5 minutes, I felt something awful. I cannot explain what exactly it was, but a horrible feeling of dread washed over me, riddling me with fear. It was then that the ground actually began to shake subtly, and the lights began to flicker. Zimmerman continued chanting into the microphone as if nothing was off or wrong, while the subjects began dashing around their rooms screaming for help. Then, the ground stopped shaking, and the monitor's image turned into static. The air became very heavy as we all stared at the monitors, waiting for them to regain their image and show us what was happening, or had happened, in those 3 rooms. For a while, all was silent, but then there was screaming. The screams of a woman going through unbearable pain and terror began to echo through the compound. The similar screams of men began to coincide with the woman's terrified screams, and together they mixed into an awful symphony of pain and fear that beat mercilessly into our ears. Those of us who were here for the money began to give each other scared looks, while those loyal to Zimmerman seemed completely unfazed. We wanted to leave and never come back to this awful place, but we all knew deep down that Zimmerman would never allow that to happen. We were here for the long haul. There was no escape. It was at 10:13 p.m. when the screaming finally stopped. The monitors had yet to reveal to us what had happened in those 3 rooms. As soon as the screaming ended, Zimmerman stood and dismissed us all for the night, adding that we were all forbidden to come back into the compound until 10 o'clock a.m. tomorrow morning. Not like any of us wanted to. We all solemnly made our way out of the compound and towards the cabins and settled in for the night. I feel it's safe to say that not all of us slept well that night, and I was not one of them. The following morning, all of the staff had arrived at the entrance building. We all stood inside, exchanging tired or nervous looks as we waited for Zimmerman to arrive and open the hatch that concealed the ladder. I could see palpable fear in the eyes of some of us, while others did not seem to have been even remotely affected by what happened last night. Zimmerman showed up 5 minutes after 10, apologizing for his tardiness as he came through the door of the entrance building. He opened the hatch and, without any hesitation, began descending the ladder down towards the dark abyss. He almost seemed enthusiastic. I was the first to follow behind Zimmerman's dark descent into the facility. It seemed that the further I climbed down, the more darkness closed in on me, as if it was trying to swallow me whole. As I climbed deeper, I couldn't help but feel that this place was different somehow. While before there was only the unsettling concrete hallways and rooms, now there was something else. Something made the eeriness feel so real and personified. I felt like a horrible and gruesome scene awaited us down there, but I continued climbing downward, despite my fear and my hesitation. This was no longer just a spooky bunker. There was darkness and malevolence in the air. True evil now lived here, and I could feel it. We all could. I finally felt my foot touch ground and let out a sigh of relief to be on solid ground. Almost as if on cue, the light bulbs came alive, dousing the room in their warm and welcome light. Zimmerman must have turned on the power, I thought. I allowed myself to take a couple of seconds to examine the control room. It was exactly as we had left it last night, for which I gave a silent and thankful prayer. It was almost as if nothing unusual had ever happened. I shook myself from my thoughts as I remembered the static-filled monitor from the night before. I let my eyes slowly make their way towards the monitors on the wall, anticipating the grim and fearful scenes that would be on them. My attention was first grabbed by monitors 1 and 3, which were still pure static. It would have been a small relief, but then the motionless image on the monitor 2 caught my eye. Room 2 was entirely still, and everything seemed entirely untouched. I couldn't help but gasp as I noticed the only thing that was different. The woman lay in the center of the small concrete room. An expression of fear and terror was frozen onto her gaunt face as she lay there silent and lifeless on her back. Zimmerman's expression turned angry when he saw this. He ordered that second monitor be turned off, and it was. We didn't ask why. It's not like any of us wanted to see the dreadful scene any longer. He also ordered that if the images in monitors 1 and 3 did not return within the next 2 hours, the security team would be sent to investigate the rooms. The security team nodded at hearing this. It made it seem as if they had no fear, but I could see it in their eyes. The subtly loud tick-tock of the clock was the only sound that echoed through the control room while I stared at the monitors. An hour and 50 minutes had gone by. The static was still all that occupied monitors 1 and 3. All of the other staff members were working except me. This was due to the fact that the project had been completely injury-free thus far, so I essentially had nothing to do but wait for someone to hurt themselves. Zimmerman, a couple of his colleagues, and I were the only ones that occupied the room. Zimmerman, a couple of his colleagues, and I were the only ones that occupied the room. They quietly chatted amongst each other on the other side of the room while I spent my time reading and pondering the situation I currently found myself in. I'd clearly made a mistake coming here. The corpse lying in room 2 was evidence enough of this, and God only knew what awaited us in rooms 1 and 3. My thoughts were soon interrupted as Monitor 3's image returned. The clear image now displayed on the screen made everybody's eyes noticeably widen. What was displayed on the monitor was horrifying. A humanoid that stood in the center of the room staring directly at the camera, unmoving. It was wearing the jumpsuit that Subject 3 had been issued, but this was clearly not the same man that had entered the room. What caught my attention first was its eyes. They were solid black and twice the size of normal human eyes. They seemed so endless and so cold. Its head had also grown with the eyes in such a symmetrical and unsettling manner. The being had also shed all of the hair it once had, and even from the monitor I could see how unnaturally smooth and clear its skin was. It had also seemingly grown in height and stature, which could be seen in the fact that the jumpsuit was now obviously far too small for its wearer. Its limbs had grown especially long. Its arms hung almost as low as the creature's knees. What we were looking at was in no way the same man we'd sent inside. Fear. Fear was all I felt as I continued to stare into the monitor at the thing in the room. And my fears seemed to be shared by those around me, which made me feel kind of good. It may sound awful, but it was also a bit satisfying to see that Zimmerman and his colleagues could feel fear too. But at the same time, it was worrying because this showed that this was not part of Zimmerman's plan. Something had gone wrong. We all stared into the monitor at the thing despite our fear. It was almost as if we were in a trance. My already present fear began to grow and spread rapidly through my body as I became lost in the creature's eyes, trapped in its terrifyingly hypnotic gaze. After what felt like forever, I managed to break eye contact with the creature and divert my attention from the monitor. When I did so, I felt my fear levels drop considerably. After a short while, Zimmerman ordered his security team to make their way to Subject 1's door, just as he said he would. The security team left without question, armed with only batons and pistols. I focused my attention on watching the men progress through the hallways towards Subject 1's room via the cameras. Even through the not-so-high-quality cameras, it wasn't hard to tell that these men were afraid of what awaited them. Their heads were downcast as they walked. They did not possess the same confidence within them they did when this project began. They looked like scared boys being sent off to a terrible war. Eventually, they made it to the door. We had perfect vision of them in the door via the hallway camera. One of them said something through one of their walkie-talkies and made a motion towards the camera. In response, one of Zimmerman's colleagues buzzed the door open. The men already had their pistols out by the time the button was pushed. Slowly, the door began to open. We all watched eagerly as the man began to approach the door. guns aimed inside. Suddenly, and without warning, there was this loud shriek, and as something bounded out of the room at the men, the monitor turned to static. Immediately, we could hear screaming echoing down the hallways, followed shortly after by the distinct sound of gunshots. We could do nothing but wait. After a couple of minutes, the screaming and gunshots stopped. We all waited and prayed, hoping that whatever bounded at them from the room would not be the one to return to the control room. After a couple more minutes, 3 of the men came back, carrying with them the corpse of the 4th. He had massive cuts covering his chest, and his face was shredded. You couldn't even tell who he was anymore, or even that he was human. I was used to gore, being a doctor and all, so I felt somewhat unfazed by the mass of shredded flesh and bloody meat they carried with them. But many of the others went pale and vomited. The security team all wore emotionless expressions, with eyes filled with terror. One of the men finally looked up at us. He stared at us, those wide eyes of his. "It's dead," he finally managed to mutter in a shaken, scared voice. A couple hours went by. The dead man's name was Frank. He was buried outside in the cold Alaskan ground. 2 of the men were unharmed, physically at least. The 3rd was alive, but only barely. His body was covered in bloody slashes, and one of his eyes had been gouged out. I managed to stabilize him. Sorry. Sheesh, I should have prepared this playlist beforehand. I managed to stabilize him, but only just. The other 2 men vaguely explained what happened. Apparently, Subject 1 leaped out at Frank after the door was open. Only it wasn't really Subject 1 anymore. According to them, it had a hideously contorted face and long, sharp claws. They claimed to have shot it over a dozen times before it fell dead, and then they emptied another dozen bullets into it just to make sure it was dead. Only once it was dead did they come back. After tending to the wounded man, I went to investigate the monitors. As afraid as I was of seeing what those monitors may have held, I needed to see. Subject 3 was the only one left now, and I needed to see it and make sure the creature was still in his room. It seemed to be more like a jail cell than an ordinary room at this point, though, which was probably a good thing. The cameras displaying Subject 1's room and the hallway outside it still displayed a static-filled screen. No one was sent to repair them or investigate. We just had to hope that Subject 1 was well and truly dead. Monitor 3's image was exactly the same as I'd left it. Subject 3 was still staring directly into the camera at us. He was still in the exact same position, and if it weren't for the small fan in the corner of the room, I would think I was looking at an image. In a way, I felt relief at seeing this. Relief that he was still in his room and hadn't escaped when no one was looking. After everything quieted down, I noticed something especially unusual. There was a strange sound emanating from somewhere. First, it was barely noticeable. The only reason I heard it was because of how extremely quiet it was in the infirmary. But as time went by, it slowly began to increase in volume. After about an hour, it was loud enough that everybody else could hear it. And after a couple more hours, its volume had increased so much that we could determine what the noise was. It was a song. One of the staff members identified it as "Living in the Sunlight" by Tiny Tim. Apparently his father loved the song and listened to it frequently. The song seemed to be on a loop and kept replaying itself. Although we were able to identify the noise, we remained unable to identify its source. We knew that it wasn't coming from the speakers because we turned them off. It seemed to be emanating from the walls themselves. More time ticked by as we all began to become increasingly agitated by the song. I spent most of my time in the infirmary attending to Frank, or in the control room. Fear hung in the air, and the presence of unmistakable darkness and evil was no doubt its source. Subject 3 had still not moved. He kept his unblinking gaze fixed on the camera the entire time. It always felt like he was staring directly at me, no matter where I was in the room. I think this effect was also felt by others, due to the fact they seemed to move around the room a lot for seemingly no reason. After a few hours, the song was so loud that people almost had to shout in order to communicate. We'd been trying to find its source so that we could turn the song off, but it was to no avail. The source was completely unidentifiable. This added a level of extreme irritation to our already present fear. It was around 8:30 that the ground itself began to shake once again, just as it had done the previous night. Panic began to spread among my fellow employees as the shaking ground grew in intensity. During this, I had the sudden instinctual feeling to look over at Subject 3's monitor. It was gone. Almost as if on cue, the power went out, and thankfully the song did as well. Ever since the security team came back, panic had been slowly building up among the staff. And Zimmerman was powerless to stop it. When those lights went out, the calm projections that everyone had been trying to maintain left us. The fear in all our hearts took over. The emergency lights kicked on shortly after the power went out, which I gave a silent, thankful prayer for. The lights were dim, but they still allowed me to see a lot. Total panic seized us as many of my fellow staff members began screaming and rushing to the ladder in an attempt to escape. But too many were trying to use it at once, and no one was able to get very far on the ladder without someone pulling them to the floor and taking their place. Zimmerman was shouting for everyone to calm down, but his dominating and intimidating personality had no effect here, and his demands fell upon deaf ears. It was total chaos. It wasn't long until people actually started hurting each other in their desperate attempts to get up that ladder and out of this place. I could only stand against the wall and wait for my opportunity to escape up the ladder. All the screams were silenced as the familiar hum of that unsettling song began to rise in volume again, only much quicker. And this time, it was clear that the noise was coming directly from the maze-like corridors. People stopped fighting and shouting as our attention shifted to the door that led into the hallways. The song quickly got louder than it had ever been before, which forced many of us to cup our ears with our hands in an attempt to silence the noise. And then, suddenly, the song just completely stopped. Silence. That was all that filled the room as we stared at the thick metal door in anticipation for what was coming. It felt like ages had gone by, but in reality, it was probably only seconds before the silence was broken. The door suddenly and violently burst open, and the music started again, louder than it had been before. The suddenness and the volume of this caused many of us to recoil by falling to the ground and grabbing our ears in an attempt to block out the noise. I glanced up for just a second, and in the doorway stood a tall, smooth-skinned figure with long limbs, and eyes so dark and malevolent that you could clearly see them in the dim lighting. After I got my bearings, I looked upwards at the creature once, just in time to see the thing pick up and rip Zimmerman in half in one fluid motion, dousing the room and everyone in it with his blood, intestines, and organs. I was no stranger to gore, but the sight of that was too much for me to bear. I hunched over immediately after seeing this and vomited all over the cold cement floor. That ladder is my only hope of survival, I thought to myself as I forced myself to a standing position. As my eyes rose along with the rest of me, I could see the thing ripping and tearing through the people as they scattered in an attempt to escape. It was distracted, and, as awful as it sounds, this was my only chance to get up that ladder. I forced my legs to move me towards the ladder, trying to block out the terrified screams of my fellow staff members and the unbearably loud music. I could hear gunshots coinciding with the screams and terrible sounds of flesh being ripped apart somewhere in the mess of noise. I reached my hands outward and felt a wave of relief wash over me as my fingers came into contact with the hard rungs of the ladder. I gripped them and began to climb upwards as quickly as I could in my disoriented state, all the while praying that the monster would not see me and pull me off the ladder and back into the slaughter. It felt like at any moment I would feel one of its smooth hands. It felt like at any moment I would feel one of its smooth hands wrap around my ankles and pull me to my death. But I eventually made it to the top. There was no question in my mind. I had to close the hatch and seal that thing down there, even if it meant certain death for my colleagues. I could not allow that thing to escape. I gripped the thick metal lid and began to push it with all my might in an attempt to seal off the underground complex. Despite how dense and sturdy it was, the lid was surprisingly easy to move and did not take very much effort to push it over the hatch, even in my weakened state. In seconds, the hatch was completely covered by the dense metal lid. I collapsed on my side and began to vomit some more as exhaustion overtook me. And as I lay there, I realized something. Aside from my labored breaths, the only thing I could hear was the faint echo of that song from down below. I felt as though I would lose more of my sanity if I continued to lay there and listen to that song. So I once again forced myself to my feet and began to make my way to the wooden lodge that I'd stayed in the previous night. It was where I'd left my baggage, and also where I'd left the keys to my truck. Of the 15 staff members that took part in that forsaken experiment, I am the only one who survived. I've never returned to the awful place where all of this happened. I don't intend to. The project was very secretive, and Zimmerman was the only one who knew all of the details of it. As far as I know, no one is aware of my involvement aside from me. In fact, I'm probably the only one who knows what the Harbinger experiment truly was, let alone what actually happened. By now, you're probably wondering why I've told you all about something none of you should be aware of. Maybe you're expecting me to give you a speech about not messing with things you don't understand or something about those lines. I hope not, for I have no speech to give or lesson to impart. I began hearing a noise earlier today. Almost immediately, I recognized the noise as a very haunting and familiar song. I didn't even try and trace its source. I knew it would be pointless. And as the day progressed, the song has increased in volume. It's loud enough now that I can clearly make out the lyrics. I'm completely unable to escape from Tiny Tim's voice. It's followed me everywhere I go. Subject 3 is coming for me. I know my time left in this world is extremely limited now. I guess you could say that I just wanted to tell the tale of the Harbinger experiment before it was lost forever. I hope that you'll take some lesson for what I've recounted to you, but I think we both know you won't. Let's be honest. You won't believe a word of what I've just told you, and I don't blame you. I wouldn't believe me if I were you. To you, this was nothing more than something to get your cheap thrills from. You were probably mindlessly surfing the internet when you clicked a link and found yourself here, wherever here may be, reading this story. And to be honest, I don't care if you believe me or not. Even if you do, it probably won't stop you from trying to uncover the truth of a darkness that few of us have ever seen. It certainly never stopped Zimmerman. If you want a lesson, look at what happened to him when he went seeking the truth. I pray that none of you will ever discover this truth. I pray that none of you will have to see the evil I have. I hope you all get to live in ignorance of what lies beyond the veil of what we can understand. It's here now. I can feel its black eyes burning into me as I could all those years ago. I'm as much to blame as Zimmerman is for this monstrosity that is free to roam the world now, even if I was not the one to create it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. That was a long read. Ah, now my throat really hurts because I've been reading for so long. But it's so fun reading these creepypastas. Like, they're some of the best stories you can ever find on the internet. Alright. Okay, this one is almost an hour long, so I'll probably save this for the next stream. This one's over 200 minutes. Alright. Let's sort by length. Keeper. Wait. Here's a good one. This one's not too long. This one's not too long, but it's also, well, I've seen it. I've seen it on another channel, and it's not really that scary. But I'll still read it, because it's not like terrible, but yeah. So we'll begin the story now. In 2017, a certain video appeared on YouTube. The phone recording presented a busy intersection in a rather large city, probably in the United States. Circumstances... Oh wait, what am I doing? I need to get rid of the Zimmerman... I need to get rid of the Harbinger experiment image. Okay, this is a good one. This is a good image. It's a girl in a green hoodie. Because the main antagonist is a girl in a hoodie. I've seen a fan-made video of it. Like, I've seen a video. She looked something like this. Okay, this picture isn't wide enough, but you get the idea. Alright, I think we're ready now. In 2017, a certain video appeared on YouTube. The phone recording presented a busy intersection in a rather large city, probably in the United States. The circumstances indicated the situation took place during rush hours in March or April, as people were wearing light coats, and some snow was still visible along the blooming trees and grass. The recording starts with screaming. can hear distant cries. Few people are seen running. Even from a distance, it's clearly a panicked rush, with lots of scuffling and pushing aside. There is a sense of confusion and uncertainty in the air. Among the obscured noises, one clear "what's going on" can be heard. The video is in good quality, but shaky, as the person holding the phone is trying to get closer to the commotion. Around the 10th second, the chaos starts spreading. Pedestrians are now moving faster and more people are running. If it wasn't for the crowd on the crossing, some would definitely have gotten hit by a car, as people are clearly being reckless and focused on getting as far as they can. The faint sounds of police sirens can be heard. The phone user is now more or less 40 feet away from the center of the ruckus, getting a nice panorama shot. 2 seconds later, there's a scream somewhere very close. Mass hysteria ensues. When the timer hits 19 seconds, a girl in a green hoodie emerges from the right corner of the screen. She's unnoticed by the camera person. The crowd is thinner where she appears, and she easily navigates among the pedestrians. You can see that she is somewhere in her early 20s, has long black hair that covers half of her face, and seems less distracted than anybody else, holding her hands in her pockets and hunching as if having back problems. People are running around her. When she gets closer, a 50-something man in a wool jumper turns in her direction. He says something muffled, and the subtitles below read, "Do you know what's going on?" Before any viewers start wondering why this random voice is subtitled, as nothing else is, the girl says something in response, then releases her hand from her pocket and touches the man on the shoulder. The camera notices the sudden movement in the corner and zooms in on the scene, whereupon the man starts twitching frantically, as if having a seizure. Something happens to his face, gets red and starts blistering. 3 seconds later, the phone's owner cries in a male voice, "Oh my fucking god, oh fuck, oh fuck," as the man falls to the ground with an unnaturally swollen chest. The nearby passerby watched this in fear, and then began screaming and running away. The crowd, now knowing the source of the panic, spread. A vast wave of bodies floods the street, stopping vehicles. Some people run past the camera person, and the phone catches glimpses of the horrified faces. Other phones are recording the commotion. The police arrive, their flickering lights appearing somewhere in the corner. The girl is now in focus. She walks towards another person and touches them. It's a teenage boy, who makes choking gestures and starts bleeding from his mouth as his chest bloats to giant proportions. 2 other boys, probably his friends, scream and try to run away, but one is snatched by the girl. He stumbles onto the ground, red and choking blood. The other one cries so loud it can be heard above the noise. In the confusion, a young woman bumps into the girl. She falls to the ground, not moving. The girl then proceeds to leap towards every person she's able to. She touches them. Each one ends up the same way. After touching about 4 more people for a brief second, she looks in the direction of the camera, grinning wildly. The video is 1 minute, 4 seconds long, has over 6 million views. The comment section consisted mostly of "what the fuck" and "is this real?" reactions. Many were not really convinced. Some proclaimed it as fake, and there were a few who believed it to be one of those pranks used to promote new horror movies. Trolls were joking that they'd bang the girl either way, of fucking course. This was the most popular video of the happening. Overall, there were over 15 original recordings, all shot from different angles and moments. After the incident, the girl in the green hoodie was nowhere to be found. The event received media coverage all over the world, but the fact that people died after being touched by her was barely mentioned. Most news reports described it as a biological attack organized by terrorists. The girl in the green hoodie must have been using some kind of gas or syringe filled with toxic chemicals. Blatant lie wasn't overlooked by the internet, as millions of commenters noted that no gas nor syringe was present during the event, and witnesses actually saw that a simple touch turned a person into a blood-choking red mess. The media, however, refused to accept this explanation and turned a blind eye to the accusations. No real explanation was given to the deaths as well. According to medical records and authorities, the victims had been dead before any help arrived. For a few days, only a range of symptoms were presented to the public. Skin lessons, obstruction of the lungs, eye inflammation, etc. The official cause of death was still unknown. However, 2 days after the internet, a post was published on an anonymous message board. The creator claimed to be one of the morgue attendants that were examining the bodies. He or she felt obligated to tell the truth about the condition of said bodies, but were shut down by their supervisors in order not to spread panic. They explained that the cause of death was with asphyxiation caused by severe pulmonary injuries, which explained the bleeding and the swollen chests. OP expressed their shock, as they'd never seen such damage caused in a short time. They also added that the victims were exposed to aflatoxins. Aflatoxins are cancerous chemicals often found in corn, walnuts, or peanuts, to name a few foods. That, especially when improperly stored, can lead to liver cancer and other horrible things such as hemorrhages. According to OP, the amount of aflatoxins in the bodies was 20 times larger than in normal instances of an aflatoxin poisoning, which caused severe damage to their livers. The list of symptoms goes on: throat injuries, internal bleeding, dermatitis, sore and bloodshot eyes, etc., developed to a very serious stage. The effects are similar to being exposed to black mold for a prolonged period of time, wrote the anonymous user. They never responded to any comments. Although people were skeptical, the post gained a lot of attention. For a few months, YouTube became flooded with reaction videos and theories. Conspiracy theories believe the girl in the green hoodie was a governmental experiment gone wrong, a real-life SCP, or even Pestilence, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The girl even gained her own cult following, becoming an internet meme. She was dubbed Rosie, in reference to Ring Around the Rosie, a nursery rhyme about the Black Death. But this was not the first time Rosie appeared on the internet. In 2011, a YouTube video was uploaded with a title written in Japanese, which could be Google translated as "Death on the Streets, Japan, Weird Girl Found." It depicts an intersection in a suburban area seen from a 3rd-floor balcony. People are running away and screaming. The camera is focused on the girl in the green hoodie in the middle of the street, monitoring the surrounding chaos. She keeps her hands in her pockets. This time, her face is hidden under a hood. Around her lie bodies, like a macabre version of petals surrounding a flower bud. You can hear the camera person talking with someone next to them. Their voices are pitched to an almost chipmunk squeak, but unless you know Japanese, you can't understand what they're saying. After almost 2 minutes of footage, Rosie leaves the scene before the police arrive. At the time, people believed this video was fake, as there was never any media coverage of the event. No one knew where it had taken place, nor who had recorded it. However, after the incident in 2017, I, the person who remembered the original Japanese video, decided to make a subreddit about the girl. I first encountered the green hoodie girl, aka Rosie, video yesterday and couldn't shake the feeling of deja vu. I searched my old YouTube playlists and found a Japanese video from 2011, link below. I'm certain this is the same girl, even though you can't see her face. The hoodie is the same. I want to know if these are related somehow. Does anybody have any information concerning any of these videos? Has anyone ever seen this girl before? The first response appeared 2 days later. When I first saw that video, I was freaked out because I had a very similar experience 2 or 3 years ago. I was sitting on a bench in a park. There were not many people walking, jogging, etc. I was on my phone waiting for a friend, but when I raised my head, I noticed a girl in a green hoodie. She passed me without any interest, and I only remembered her because she had a big smile on her face, which I thought was cute. After that, I stopped paying attention, but a few minutes later, I heard a scream. I ran to see what happened, and I found an older guy laying on the ground with a really red face and a swollen chest. I thought he'd choked on something, so I called 911. It took them some time to get there. I was scared out of my mind at the time, so I can't remember if the girl was even there. Seeing all those bodies in that video reminded me of the guy, and the girl that passed me with a big smile on her face. If it's the same girl, I think I'll go mad. She could have touched me too if she wanted to. The post gained a lot of replies, but one was more interesting than the others. The user shared a blurry photo of two dead horses near a fence, their chests swollen and patches of red skin between the fur. They were positioned in such a way that you couldn't see their faces, but I could imagine their eyes were bloodshot. The user wrote, "I live in a family farm in the outskirts of France where we breed horses. Over 5 years ago, we found two of our mares dead just like this. We thought some wild animal had done it, as we live close to a forest. But there were no bite or claw wounds. We called a vet. He did an autopsy and claimed the horses had a severe case of mold poisoning, and said we should check our stables as quickly as possible. Our stables are well maintained, but we checked every nook and cranny just in case. There was not even a speck of mold. Besides, there were several other horses in the paddock, healthy and unharmed. For years, I believe the two dead ones had to have eaten something toxic until I saw the video on YouTube with Rosie, the green-hooded girl. I couldn't believe my eyes, because the victims had the same symptoms as our mares back then. Then, I found the post of the autopsy technician who described the cause of death. Asphyxiation from severe black mold exposure. Fucking mold exposure. I don't know if she killed my horses, but the symptoms were exactly the same. There is a path next to the paddock near the right fence where our horses were found. People were horrified after seeing the photo. You can kill a man and no one bats an eye, but animal cruelty is, fortunately, less tolerated on the internet. Many hypotheses appeared before someone posted another video. There was an introduction in broken English, but I managed to make it out. Apparently, OP used to work at a bar. One night, while on shift, he heard screams and gunshots coming from outside. He was too scared to check what was happening, as it was a really nasty neighborhood. After about 10 minutes, everything went silent. The next day, he and his boss checked the video surveillance. I watched the footage he uploaded. In the dim glow of the entrance lighting, two men ran through the street. One disappeared from the shot, but the other was quickly snatched by someone whose face was hidden under a hoodie. The captured man twitched erratically before falling to the ground, motionless. The hooded figure quickly followed the one who escaped. It was dark. Footage had a very low frame rate and the quality was really bad, but many agreed, me included, that the attacker was rather short for a man, didn't use any weapons, and was wearing something resembling a zip-front sweatshirt of uncertain color. What really bothered me was the mentions of gunshots. As it was CCTV footage, no audio was recorded. But if someone was shooting Rosie, if it really was Rosie, didn't seem to be affected in any way. Over the span of a few months, my subreddit has grown over 3 times in size. People have shared their experiences and posted photos and videos they've found. There were a few who decided to make YouTube documentaries about Rosie, based on all the uploaded material. There was a lot to find. We've received video recordings from airports, stores, and streets all over the world. The number of photos depicting dead, swollen bodies was remarkable. Some people claimed to spot Rosie, even taking pictures inconspicuously, but in most cases they were false alarms or fake. Theories started popping up like mad. Even Rosie's popularity grew. She received a lot of fan art, very often disturbing in more ways than one. I think she's misunderstood. Maybe that smile is fake and she is really suffering, one user wrote. He received a quick reply. You're a fucking idiot, you know that? What really shook me up was a photo posted about 5 months after I created my subreddit. The user described it in just one sentence. I didn't make it. The photo presented Rosie from behind without her hood on, her hair hanging from her shoulders as she leant against a brick wall. At her feet lay a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, probably of Middle Eastern descent. He was curled up as if trying to hide himself, and looking at Rosie with sheer terror in his eyes, his face red from crying. The photo presented Rosie from behind without her. Oh wait, oops. There was no background story to this. No one could recognize the place, nor the boy. People who clearly didn't read the post started accusing the OP of just staying there and taking pictures, and were reminded in read descriptions first. The photo stayed in my mind for a long time. The boy's face haunts me to this day. I quickly connected the dots and began my own investigation. I started posting videos of myself trying to solve the mystery of Rosie. I tried to dig up information about her real name, origins, and possible relatives, but to no avail. I contacted police departments in countries Rosie was reported in. Despite evidence I presented, she was never caught or even seen. In a Skype interview with a police officer who witnessed the 2017 incident, he said, "We kept hearing about a girl in a green hoodie, but we never found such a person. No personal information, no address, nothing. We sent police notices all around the country. Whoever she was, she disappeared without a trace. Despite my best efforts, I wasn't able to find anything. It seems as if Rosie comes from nowhere and can appear and disappear whenever and wherever she pleases. Sometimes when I check all the evidence, I start doubting myself. Blurred photos, easily manipulated and staged videos, accounts of people that might be lying or simply gullible. I might be onto something, but maybe this is all a wild goose chase and I need to stop believing in everything I see on the internet. But I can't stop worrying. All the videos and written accounts from other people described locations that were remote or barely inhabited. And the 2017 video was the first time Rosie was seen in a more crowded, populated space." Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's where this story ends, literally. Ends on a bit of a... I wouldn't even say that's a cliffhanger, it just ends abruptly. Sheesh. But, alright, what's in... How long is this story? How long is this one? This one was made on April the 1st. Okay, this one is an April Fool's one, so this is a paragraph. Make sure I get like the absolute scariest music that I can find. normal restaurant. I smiled as the waiter came up to me. I heard some stories about this restaurant being disturbing, but everything was fine until this point. I felt my grin slip off my face as I heard her utter a string of forbidden words. I'm sorry, sir. We're all out of garlic bread. Okay, that was good. We're all out of garlic bread. Whoa! That's the scary part. Alright. Alright, some of these are just weird. Alright. Jack Black. Jack Black and Infinity? Wait, this creepypasta is about Jack Black? It's not the Jack Black that we're thinking of. It's not Poe. It's not Steve. It's not Bowser. I was gonna say, Jack Black? Like, what is creepy about Jack Black? I am Sam. Is it Sam I am? Alright. Let's see, I read Zalgo. I'm not reading Herobrine. And if anyone goes into the comment section of this stream to tell me, read Herobrine, the answer is no. Licking. What? Is that someone's weird fetish? I don't know if I should read that one, guys. That's a little bit sus. No End House. This is a good one. But it's really, really, really long. It's over an hour long, and I'm not sitting here and reading this. I'll either do a video or another stream for that one. Slenderman, Sonic, Smile Dog. This one's not too long, and it's actually pretty darn good. Smile dog. Okay, here's pictures of actual smiling dogs. Oh my god, is this the actual smile dog photo? This is terrifying. Guys, I think we found Smile Dog. I don't know if this is AI generated or if it's actually the photo that they used, but this is terrifying. Like look at this. This is nightmare fuel. Get rid of it. All right, let's get the actual Smile Dog photo. Is that the original Smile Dog photo? I don't know, because I know we have a similar photo. Ah. Yeah, the creepier version, we've seen that one. It's a Siberian Husky, and he looks like he's in the middle of having a temper tantrum. Huskies are they're some of the most dramatic dogs in the world. Like, they literally have temper tantrums. Alright, where's a good high res or good widescreen version? Smile Dog the video game. Alright, let me look this up. Smile Dog the horror game. Wait, is this... Okay, it's just cheap screamers. I'm not playing this. I'm not playing a game that just relies on cheap jump scares. Yes, I'm looking at you, Five Nights at Freddy's players. Alright, so this creepypasta is about 17 minutes long. And I'll probably read it and then GTFO for the day. I first met in person with Mary E. in the summer of 2007. I had arranged with her husband of 15 years, Terrence, to see her for an interview. Mary had initially agreed since I was not a newsman, but rather an amateur writer gathering information for a few college assignments, and if all went according to plan, some pieces of fiction. We scheduled the interview for a particular weekend when I was in Chicago on unrelated business. But at the last moment, Mary changed her mind and locked herself in the couple's bedroom, refusing to meet with me. For half an hour, I sat with Terrence as we camped outside the bedroom door, listening and taking notes while he attempted fruitlessly to calm his wife. The things Mary said made little sense, but fit with the pattern I was expecting. Though I could not see her, I could tell from her voice that she was crying, and more often than not, her objections to speaking with me centered around an incoherent diatribe on her dreams, her nightmares. Terence apologized profusely when we ceased the exercise, and I did my best to take it in stride. Recalled that I wasn't a reporter in search of a story, but merely a curious young man in search of information. Besides, I thought at the time I could perhaps find another similar case if I put my mind and resources to it. Mary E. was the sysop for a small Chicago-based bulletin board system in 1992 when she first encountered Smile.jpg, and her life changed forever. She and Terence had been married for only 5 months. Mary was one of an estimated 400 people who saw the image when it was posted as a hyperlink on the BBS, though she is the only one who has spoken openly about the experience. The rest have remained anonymous or are perhaps dead. In 2005, when I was only in 10th grade, Smile.jpg was first brought to my attention by my burgeoning interest in web-based phenomena. Mary was the most often cited victim of what is sometimes referred to as Smile.dog. The being Smile.jpg is reputed to display. What caught my interest, other than the obvious macabre elements of the cyber legend and my proclivity towards such things, was the sheer lack of information, usually to the point that people don't believe it even exists other than as a rumor or hoax. It is unique because though the entire phenomenon centers on a picture file, that file is nowhere to be found on the internet. Surely many photo-manipulated simulacra litter the web, showing up with the most frequency on sites such as the image port 4chan, particularly the X-focused paranormal subboard. It is suspected that these are fakes because they do not have the same effect the true Smile.jpg is believed to have, namely sudden onset temporal lobe epilepsy and acute anxiety. This purported reaction in the viewer is one of the reasons that the phantom-like Smile.jpg is regarded with such disdain, since it is patently absurd. Though, depending on who you ask, reluctance to acknowledge Smile.jpg's existence might be just as much out of fear as it is out of disbelief. Neither Smile.jpg nor Smile.dog is mentioned anywhere on Wikipedia, though the website features articles on such other, perhaps more scandalous shock sites, such as hello.jpg or 2 girls 1 cup. Any attempt to create a page pertaining to Smile.jpg is similarly deleted by the encyclopedia's many admins. Many encounters with Smile.jpg are the stuff of internet legend. Mary E.'s story is not unique. There are unverified rumors of Smile.jpg showing up in the earliest days of Usenet, and even one persistent tale that in 2002, a hacker flooded the forums of humor and satire website Something Awful with a deluge of Smile.dog pictures, rendering almost half of the forum's users at the time epileptic. It's said that in the mid to late 90s that Smile.jpg circulated on Usenet, and as an attachment of a chain email with the subject line, "Smile, God loves you." Yet, despite the huge exposure these stunts would generate, there are very few people who admit to having experienced any of them, and no trace of the file or any link has ever been discovered. Those who claim to have seen Smile.jpg often weakly joke that they were far too busy to save a copy of the picture to their hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo: a dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of the camera, sits in a dim room, the only background detail that is visible being a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty, but is usually described as beckoning. course, most of the attention is given to the dog, or dog-like creature. Most of the attention is given to the dog, or the dog-like creature, as some victims are more certain than others about what they claim to have seen. The muzzle of the beast is reputedly split into a wide grin, revealing 2 rows of very white, very straight, very sharp, very human-looking teeth. This is, of course, not a description given immediately after viewing the picture, but a recollection of the victims, who claim to have seen the picture endlessly repeated in their mind's eyes during the time that they are, in reality, having epileptic fits. These fits are reported to continue indeterminately, often while the victims sleep, resulting in very vivid and disturbing nightmares. These may be treated with medication, though in some cases it is more effective than others. Mary E., I assumed, was not on effective medication. That's why, after my visit to her apartment in 2007, I sent out feelers to several folklore and urban legend-oriented news groups, websites, and mailing lists, hoping to find the name of a supposed victim of Smile.jpg, who felt more interested in talking about his or her experience. For a time, nothing happened, and at a length, I forgot completely about my pursuits, since I had begun my freshman year of college and was quite busy. Mary contacted me via email, however, near the beginning of March 2008, added by Moose Juice to jnl@redacted.com from Mary E. at redacted.net. Subject: last summer's interview. Dear Mr. L., I am incredibly sorry about my behavior last summer when you came to interview me. I hope you understand that it was no fault of yours, but rather my own problems that led me to act out as I did. I realize that I could have handled the situation more decorously. However, I hope you will forgive me. At the time, I was afraid. You see, for 15 years, I've been haunted by Smile.jpg. Smile.dog comes to me in my sleep every night. I know that sounds silly, but it is true. There's an ineffable quality about my dreams, my nightmares, that makes them completely unlike... Oh. There's an ineffable quality about my dreams, my nightmares, that makes them completely unlike any real dreams I've ever had. I do not move and do not speak. I simply look ahead, and the only thing ahead of me is the scene from that horrible picture. I see the beckoning hand, and I see Smile.dog. It talks to me. It's not a dog, of course, though I'm not quite sure what it really is. It tells me it will leave me alone if only I do as it asks. All I must do, it says, is spread the word. That is how it phrases its demands, and I know exactly what it means. It wants me to show it to someone else. And I could. The week after my incident, I received in the mail a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was only a 3.5-inch floppy diskette. Without having to check, I knew precisely what was on it. I thought for a long time about my options. I could show it to a stranger or a coworker. I could even show it to Terrence, as much as the idea disgusted me. And what would happen then? Well, Smile.dog kept its word, I could sleep. Yet, if it lied, what would I do? And who was to say something worse would not come for me if I did as the creature asked? So I did nothing for 15 years, though I kept the diskette hidden amongst my things. Every night for 15 years, Smile.dog has come to me in my sleep and demanded that I spread the word. For 15 years I've stood strong, though there have been hard times. Many of my fellow victims on the BBS board, where I first posted Smile.jpg, stopped posting. heard some of them committed suicide. Others remained completely silent, simply disappearing off the face of the web. They are the ones I worry about the most. I sincerely hope you will forgive me, Mr. L, but last summer when you contacted me and my husband about an interview, I was near my breaking point. I decided I was going to give you the floppy disk. I didn't care if Smile Dog was lying or not. I wanted it to end. You were a stranger, someone I had no connection with. I thought I wouldn't feel bad when you took the diskette as part of your research and sealed your fate. Before you arrived, I realized what I was doing. I was plotting to ruin your life. I could not stand the thought, and in fact, I still cannot. I'm ashamed, Mr. L. And I hope that this warning will dissuade you from further investigation of Smile.jpg. You may in time encounter someone who is, if not weaker than I, then wholly more depraved. Someone who will not hesitate to follow through with Smile Dog's orders. Stop while you are still whole. Sincerely, Mary E. Terrence contacted me later that month with the news that his wife had killed herself. While cleaning up the various things she'd left behind, closing email accounts and the like, he happened upon the above message. He was a man in shambles. He wept as he told me to follow his wife's advice. He found the diskette, he revealed, and burned it until it was nothing but a stinking pile of blackened plastic. The part that most disturbed him, however, was how the diskette had hissed as it melted, like some sort of animal, he said. I will admit that I was a little uncertain about how to respond to this. At first, I thought perhaps it was a joke, with the couple belatedly playing with the situation in order to get a rise out of me. Quick check of several Chicago newspapers' online obituaries, however, proved that Mary E. was indeed dead. There was, of course, no mention of suicide in the article. I decided that, for some time at least, I would not further pursue the subject of Smile.jpg, especially since I had finals coming up at the end of May. But the world has odd ways of testing us. Almost a full year after I'd returned from my disastrous interview with Mary E., I received another email. To jml@redacted.com from elzahir82@redacted.com. Subject, Smile. Hello, I found your email address through a mailing list. Your profile said you're interested in Smile Dog. I have saw it. It is not as bad as everyone says. I have sent it to you here. Just spreading the word, smiley face. The final line chilled me to the bone. According to my email client, there was one file attachment called, naturally, Smile.jpg. I considered downloading it for some time. It was most likely a fake, I imagined. And even if it weren't, I was never wholly convinced of Smile.jpg's peculiar powers. Mary E.'s account had disturbed me, or had shaken me, yes, but she was probably mentally unbalanced anyway. After all, how could a simple image do what Smile.jpg was said to accomplish? What sort of creature was it that could break one's mind with only the power of the eye? And if such things were patently absurd, then why did the legend exist after all? If I downloaded the image, if I looked at it, and if Mary turned out to be correct, if Smile Dog came to me in my dreams demanding I spread the word, what would I do? Would I live my life as Mary had, fighting against the urge to give in until I died? Or would I simply spread the word, eager to be put to rest? And if I chose the latter route, how could I do it? Whom would I burden in turn? If I went through with my earlier intention to write a short article about Smile.jpg, I decided I could attach it as evidence. And anyone who read the article, anyone who took interest, would be affected. And even assuming the Smile.jpg attached to the email was genuine, would I be capricious enough to save myself in that manner? Could I spread the word? Yes. Yes, I could. Okay, that was a really good creepypasta. That smile dog. It's because it, like, for the time, it feels so real, you know? This was made back in, like, the Wild West era of the internet, you know? Oh my word, I realized that I put window capture instead of audio capture for FreeTube, so you guys have just been watching the playlist. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think for now this is where I'm going to end the stream, because my throat is starting to hurt from all of this reading. Yeah. Well, thanks, thanks to everyone who tuned in today. I'll see you guys on the next stream. Have a nice day. Take care, everyone.